Hi Sarah, it's Kim Lester from Minneapolis. My husband Josh is here with me trying to figure out this electronic stuff. So we're just gonna go and do the best we can. Our three sons are in the basement, so you might hear them coming upstairs. But I wanted to make sure I got this sent to you tonight. So Josh, first of all, I want to make sure I gave you a handbook for the group, and thank you for attending the primary care moving forward group in primary care. And today in this first session, we're just going to talk a little bit about an overview of the training, the rationale behind it, why we do it, how it's effective, those types of things. So problem solving group is 4 weekly sessions. Today we're going to meet for about 90 minutes because we have to complete some paperwork and things like that. And the rest of the sessions will be about 60 minutes long, depending on the group. And the overall goal of this group is to just teach veterans, this is for veterans and active duty service members, how to deal with problems. We all have problems in our life. We react to them in different ways. These 4 sessions are basically an overview of how to handle those.
Okay.
So I'm going to provide you I have the participant handbook there for you to look through, and we're just going to go through session 1 today. So you can open up to that.
Appointment 1?
Appointment 1, yes.
Okay.
So basically, what do problems look like to you? If you think about a problem, do you have an example of one that you've had come about lately?
Like a problem at work or a problem at home or
You can choose.
a work problem would be, for me, would be dealing with a very difficult client or contact.
Okay.
Someone who's very argumentative and confrontational and doesn't want to do what they're told to do.
Okay. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in this first session. We're just going to kind of identify some problems, how maybe you've learned to deal with problems serving in the military versus problems in civilian life, and how they are quite different, but a lot of the skills you learn in the military are very value added to civilian life. So an example that I give to many veterans about problems and how civilian life and military life is different is, like for myself, when I went to basic training. I went to basic training not knowing a thing about the military. I really didn't even know how to wear the uniform, how to point a weapon, how to do any of that stuff. And what the military does is they overtrain you. So the goal is so that when you go over to combat, you go to Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever, that your body just automatically knows how to respond without stimulus or overtraining. You just know how to do it. So if you were driving on a road in Iraq, you're trained to look for IEDs on the sides of the road, and you do that for a year over and over again every day, and you come back home, the problem could be driving too fast, driving around other vehicles, causing accidents, because your body and your mind is trained to do what you did in the military.
Kind of like muscle memory.
Just like muscle memory, yeah. So those things were taught so that you could survive in the military and a combat environment. But the difference is, in civilian life, that could get you or someone else killed if you don't try to deal with it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole purpose behind this training is not to change you. It's just to change some ways of thinking or looking at things, to try and solve problems in an easier way, easier manner. So I'm going to go through that a little bit more today. And this training provides 3 toolboxes. So there's 3 different kinds of toolboxes we're going to review.
Okay.
Today we're just going to overview the first one and then briefly the second and third one. And appointment 2 and 3 we'll go through it in a little more detail.
Okay.
So what I normally use, and Sarah, I don't have the slides, so I'm just going to use this book, but usually, so on page 24 there's a diagram of overcoming obstacles to your goals, which I really wanted to go through because it's helpful for veterans to kind of understand. Is it in the same numbers? So it's right in the beginning.
Oh, yeah, I have that right here.
Page 5, okay. It's different for your handbook. Apologize for that.
What about the teacher version?
I have the teacher version, yes. So normally I would write this on a whiteboard and I would have arrows and things like this there, so I don't have that, so I'll just kind of go with the flow here. So I really, really like this diagram because it shows how stress can affect your life and how when you're stressed out, if you learn in kind of practicing over again how to effectively problem solve, you're able to adjust more positively. It seems pretty simple, but when you're in the heat of the moment, or you don't handle stress very well, or maybe you have very many life situations that happen at once, then we can be ineffective with our problem solving, which can lead to anxiety, depression, insomnia, all sorts of things, which then, as you see on the diagram, lead right back to stress. The more stress you have, the more ineffective problem solving you have, the more health and emotional issues you have. So the whole point of this training is trying to give you tools on how to effectively and healthy manner work through your problems. And you know, when we, as human beings, multitasking is easier for some of us than others. But why do you think some veterans have difficulty with multitasking?
It could be that their training is so ingrained in them that they're used to a single line of thought, and the structure that the military provided them doesn't force them to adapt like that.
That's really good feedback, yeah. So again, kind of going back to the overlearning. So if you look at it psychologically in our brain, when we become overwhelmed or kind of overstimulate our brain, the cortisol levels go way up, right? Which then causes your adrenaline to rush, which then causes you to react in the military. So when you come back home and there's all of these other things that are going on in life, and your brain is kind of overstimulated, that can lead to brain overload, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. When you're in the civilian life, or let's say you know you're a veteran who's 65 and you're retiring from work, and all you've known for so many years is your job, you know, whatever kind of job you had. All of a sudden you retire and you're home and you don't know what to do with yourself. And maybe don't know what your purpose is, or don't know how to figure out problems that you were used to figuring out when you were working full time. Like you talked about the instance of the contractors or people that you work with and how that can be a problem for you and cause you stress and overload and things like that. So then kind of coming out of that situation, you would learn how to deal with that there, but then how would you deal with that in the civilian world, like out of the workforce. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's just brainstorm some overall problems that maybe veterans or active duty service members might have. And well, for just time's sake, we'll just say Iraq, Afghanistan veteran population. What do you think are some of the problems facing that current population?
For the folks who are just coming back, just plain on getting used to daily life.
What do you mean by that?
I would imagine, not having done it myself, that a lot of their day-to-day activities become very routine and very regimented. When you come back here, especially if you don't have a job, you suddenly have no regimen to your day, no structure.
Exactly.
Which I suppose could really drive a few people batty.
Yes. So again, kind of going off script, Sarah, I would have a whiteboard and I would be writing all these things down on the board that the veterans get read in the group. But that's exactly right. When you're in a deployed environment, your laundry gets done for you, the food is provided for you, you know when your work shift is going to be, you typically know when you're going to get off your work shift and when you get to sleep, and you come and you don't get 15 different choices of cereal, you get whatever you get. So then you can come back home, you know, to Minnesota, and you go to the grocery store to get groceries because your husband says, hey, go get groceries, go to Target, and it can be extremely overwhelming because you're not used to that. You could have trouble sleeping, it could have some depression as a result of that, anger problems, pain that you had to kind of deal with and suck it up and deal with while you were deployed or overseas or getting out of the military now are affecting you more. You may have been an infantryman over in Iraq and you come home and you're working at McDonald's. You know, that might not be as satisfying as a job. You might feel like you're not quite, you know, getting your purpose met. You might turn to drugs or alcohol. There may be relationship issues, family problems, feeling alone, like you want to go back, or you want to be around the people you were with because they understand. Those are just a short list of some of the many problems that veterans could face. And again, everyone views problems, what a problem is, very differently. So let's go through, I'm going to go through toolkit number 1, which I'm not sure which page that is on in your booklet there. And talk a little bit about ineffective coping and what that kind of looks like. And I have a handy dandy little card to hand out that I give to all veterans in my group that you can take with you. And we're going to discuss the SSTA at a different time. I'm going to briefly go over that. But if you look at problem solving multitasking, that's the overcoming the brain overload where you feel completely overwhelmed by the 15 different choices of cereal or a list of things you have to do, not sure how to organize it all in your brain, organize it all down. That's called brain overload. Do you have an example of when maybe you've had brain overload?
Monday morning in the office. That's about it.
Emails, phone calls, people coming in the office.
Yeah, I mean,
Trying
on a typical Monday morning, I've got 300 to 400 emails in the inbox. Both my phones will be ringing constantly, and I've got people knocking on my door with questions, and sometimes you just need to close the door.
So that's a really good example of externalizing. So on the card, on the first top of the card, one way to kind of overcome or help with that brain overload is to externalize. And externalizing can be many different things for many different people. For me, when I get to work every single day, I make a list of what I have to get done that day. And then below that list of what I have to get done, I write down what I would like to get done that day, but it's not necessary. The top list, you know, like must get done today. And then below that, needs to get done maybe today or the rest of this week. And I prioritize those things. So I write it down, I journal, I get it out somehow. That could be using a voice recorder, it could be talking to someone about it, externalizing, getting it out. Because then your brain isn't as overloaded. And if you get it out of your head, that kind of gets you away from that brain freeze, because if your brain is completely overloaded, when I get overloaded, my brain's completely overloaded, which happens a lot with having 3 boys and working full time. I really have to take a few deep breaths and then write down what those thoughts are so I can get them out to be effective. So that's just a brief overview of that. Next is visualization. And a good example I have for this is kind of going off of the rest of the externalizing but into visualizing is if you are going to want to do a kitchen remodel, what's the first thing that you would do to do a kitchen remodel? Would you just walk into the kitchen and start tearing things down?
No.
Okay.
I would first make a plan.
Yeah. So you would externalize it down on paper, maybe draw up a plan or have someone draw up a plan.
Yeah.
And then how would you get that plan accomplished? Because you look at this big kitchen, remodel or designing of a garden, and it's completely overwhelming. How do you make it so it's not as overwhelming?
Well, I guess being as so this is what I do for a living, once I have the plan in place, the visual plan, then I put the time plan in place and actually draw up a schedule of which activities come first, which activities come next, and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
and try to appropriately identify how long each activity will take, so that I can look at how long the entire project may take.
So-
and break it down into tasks.
Would simplifying it be a good word to use?
That would be appropriate, I think.
And Sarah, again, for training purposes, this is another picture that I use. It's like a big funnel, which I think really helps kind of visualize how to do that. And it's just what you said. You have the big plan, and then you kind of simplify what really needs to be done first, second, and then you be more specific and have concrete language on how you're gonna get there.
Okay.
Sounds simple. Okay. It's 15 minutes already? Okay. I didn't get very far.
The instructions said if you don't get all the way done, you can stop at 15 minutes and that'll be okay.
Okay, Sarah, if you want more, then just email me and tell me if you want more. But I guess my husband tells me it's been 15 minutes, so I'm gonna send this to you. I like to talk.